And that isn't really a solution mostly because they're mostly lined now with plastic, and then they have these dual contents, and they can't be recycled, and they end up in the landfill, and the landfill doesn't want paper. Paper doesn't really disintegrate in the landfill because it's anaerobic, and so it just sits there. They say you can read the print on newspapers that are 25 years old. So you think, oh, paper is just going to dissolve in the landfill. And the landfill doesn't want food either. So we learned this from previous forums that we had, that landfill doesn't want this stuff. And the landfill actually told us, we aren't recycling this. It's good. If you send a peanut butter jar with peanut butter in it, it's not going to, we're not going to recycle it. It has to be clean, it can't have food stuck to it, and I bet a lot of people don't know that. So it makes you feel bad that a lot of these things aren't really healthy. But that's what we found out on the plastic free. And the audit really doesn't take very long, probably is less than an hour, and we're happy to do it. And that helps you to just, even look at your own situation and say, wow, we could really be, don't have to have plastic for this. Some areas have used plastic for the their bulk section. And we don't want plastic touching the food, actually, because we've learned now from our second seminar that plastic transfers into the food and also absorbs toxins. So we actually really don't want food in plastic. We prefer food to be in glass or some kind of inert material. So you can do your own audit, or if you want help, or you want to do an audit and then have us come in and just look through and give you advice. We are a committee of 6 people, and we would love more people to join, because there's a lot of work to do. And so feel free to be part of Plastic Free. But anyway, we do it for free because we want to do it and we want to help people out. They were pretty much already on board in a lot of ways. Like they don't want cheese to be wrapped in plastic. That isn't really the best way to store cheese. And so they've been looking for alternatives, and I think, what have you decided? Well, the plastic you show will be wrapped in plastic. I mean, the cheese you show will be wrapped in plastic. But the cheese that's stored will not be. It'll be wrapped in a kind of cheese paper or something.
Yeah, cheese paper is really a better product. I don't know what the downstream cycle of that cheese paper is. I would be surprised if it's recyclable. It's not plastic. We've tried some products that are like lined in beeswax and that are reusable. We find that they're great for the first 6 months, but after you've washed them several times, you've taken the wax off, and it's just no longer a great product. So we've used those as we can. We find that those are useful, and when we're using products that don't have to be scrubbed, and then those have a little bit of a longer life cycle, and that works out well. But yeah, in terms of the plastic audit and what it takes, it frankly was really eye-opening. I'm glad that we did it. We identified some really simple, easy things that we were able to do to make a difference immediately to reduce our footprint of plastic waste. I'm also, as director of the chamber, I saw Vicki at one of our events last year had a giant water barrel available for folks to fill up their own water cups, and I'd love to work with you and see if maybe we can bring that to more events, because one area where we're habitual offenders at the chamber is in the distribution of water. If folks need water, a single-use plastic bottle is where we generally lean into because they're readily available, it's easy to hand over, it doesn't cost me a whole lot, but we're also aware that, like, talk about #1 offender, that's got to be near the top of the list. I saw all these bottle caps in that albatross, and it just makes me feel terrible, knowing that I'm part of that problem. So I would love to work with you at some of our events coming up in the summer and see how we can reduce some of that waste. At our Viroqua soup events, we have historically used some disposable bowls. I only have so many bowls. We've come up with some solutions. I've just partnered with folks in the community who do have bowls. They let me bring them in. We brought in some potters to sell bowls. So hopefully we have used our last disposable bowl and spoon at the Viroqua soup event.
Couldn't you put a sign on your door that says, if we serve you too much food, bring your own container for home use. Okay.
I think you
Would that-
touched on something important here, Kitty and Vicki touched on this earlier, is that if you let your consumers know that you have options for them, you will gain customers, you will gain community appreciation, and you will find that there's less waste. Yeah, so by letting folks know, folks will bring their stuff in, they sure will. I have to admit, just personally, in terms of like single-use coffee cups, I'm saying this because I'm standing here in front of you telling you that I'm committed to being part of the solution. But I use so darn many stinking coffee cups. I'm ashamed of myself, frankly, between the cup and the lid and the sleeve, and I live next door to the coffee shop, and there's no reason I don't bring my own cup. So even me, who is absolutely acutely aware of the problem, I'm also absolutely acutely aware that I can do a lot more personally to be part of the solution. We got a lot more program here, so I'm going to quit blabbering on, but thank you for letting me tell my story. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. Thank you, Chris.
Chris?
One of the things that Chris touched on a little bit was involving staff, involving customers. You know, I love the idea of using the metal utensils, you know, with your to-go lunch, but you can maybe say, I'm giving you this metal spoon. If you bring it back with you the next time you're here, we'll give you 10 cents off your meal or something like that. And I think that's part of it, making this a community effort rather than just something that businesses are doing or schools are doing, involving the customers as well. So you were going to talk a little bit about involving staff.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I was hoping to hear more from other people in the audience to hear what are ways that you think that you can involve your staff to help promote this kind of idea of like reusing. I think you had a story about the shed aquarium, or is that, no?
Right. Yeah, I can jump into that. A lot of younger people, and I presume, you know, well, certainly students, but then also employees are younger people, and I think they are very motivated to be green, and so I would imagine it'd be fairly easy to get them on board with what a business might be doing. I don't know, Chris, have you had a conversation with your employees about this?
We've had the conversation that we are looking to reduce plastic waste in any way that we can. And one way that we've got them involved is simply by making that ask when somebody's taking that to-go cup. Rather than just hand them the spoon and hand them the extra bag and all the additional packaging, we simply ask them, do you want this? And probably 50% of the time, no.
Yeah.
Take it home.
And one of the important things, if staff members or students perhaps aren't up to speed on the whole plastic issue, there is information, there are links in the booklet that you can access online talking about, here's one, you know, single-use plastic straws, why we must stop sucking, you know, talking, just educating people, the staff, you know, about the importance of it. There's one about why we must say no to foam for styrofoam, and information about single-use plastic bags. So sometimes just having that information, just the numbers, you know, even the images, you know, that we saw tonight, just kind of makes it more real for people, and they can, you know, want to participate. Shed Aquarium in Chicago they're doing Let's Shed Plastic. And again, as a link to this information, they have phrases that you can teach your staff to use, you know, to explain to customers why you're doing what you're doing, or even what it is you are doing. So they're not having to, you know, think of it on the spot, but they have some little education, you know, about what they can say. For example, if your business is switching to offering straws or cutlery on request only, I would be happy to get those items for you. Our business has made a commitment with Shed Aquarium to offer plastic items such as whatever on request only, so as to reduce the amount of plastic we hand out that ends up being thrown out after one use or no use at all. This change was made to help reduce the amount of plastic ending up in Lake Michigan and the Chicago River. So just information like that, that your staff has at hand that they can use when perhaps somebody asks them about something. I think one of the things that we wanted to talk about too is just hearing what you have so far. There are things that you might consider involving your staff, or ways you might consider involving your staff. Any ideas? We're hoping that this is not so much a presentation as a conversation. Any ideas out there? It's certainly coming from a school. Tina, you know, you're coming from a different standpoint, but it would be kind of the same thing of just involving staff to educate the students as they come through the lunch line or whatever.
A lot of the, in our situation, I know I talked to Mary, we had, with COVID, and we packaged food and sent home. There was a lot of packaging and stuff.
Yeah.
So we've gotten away from that. We use real trays and stuff for our lunches. We use a cardboard boat if we're having, you know, grab and go type of meal. But the students in the public school are used to grab and go and prepackaged items. And even like bottled water, we go through a lot of bottled water, flavored bottled water. So finding ways to get around that is going to be a real challenge. You know, we have our real trays. We had a shortage of staff, so we had to use plastic silverware. But I'd like to get back to the real silverware, but the kids think that that's disposable too. And they're going to real silverware away. So it would cost less to do the plastic because of all the silverware that was thrown away. So it's a lot of educating not the staff, but students, you know, all from top to bottom, administration and everything.
Right, and Kickapoo Schools has really, in the area, been the one school that has invited Viroqua Plastic Free to do a couple different presentations around Earth Day and then also around their summer school programs. So certainly educating the little ones that are going to be inheriting this problem is, you know, definitely something that's very helpful to change their behavior while they're young and eager, you know, and want to do the right thing. So that can be very helpful. Any other ideas out there about how you might involve staff? Yeah?
I have a question not related to how to reduce plastic, but going back to the plastic oceans, plastic islands that are in the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that there is microplastics in practically every human being, bird, fish, animal, plant, whatever. Have there been any studies done to find out whether or not there are any human reproductive issues with having all this plastic in our system?
Yes.
There have.
Yes, there has. Actually, we knew this as far back as, I think, the 1990s. There was a book called Our Stolen Future about how being exposed to the chemicals in plastic can affect our reproductive systems, and not only the individual who's ingesting it, but then their children. They are just permanently changed by the impact that these chemicals have on our bodies. And one thing that they talked about is that our fertility is actually in jeopardy, that the sperm count from 50 years ago was twice as much as it is now. People are having difficulty conceiving, even though they're young and healthy, but this is just an ongoing generational situation. And I've heard it said, you know, by people that study this, that humans will be eunuchs in a couple more generations if we don't turn this around. So it's pretty alarming. Yeah, so, there's an urgency to change this problem because you're absolutely right that microplastics have been found in our blood, in newborn babies' feces, in breast milk. It's everywhere. They say that we ingest about a credit card's worth of plastic each week, and we have no idea what that does short term, but they are noticing long term, especially in animal studies, all these major fertility issues. So yeah, it's a good question and kind of a scary answer.
One of the biggest reasons that happens is when you wear clothing that is made of plastic, so acrylic, polyester fleece, and like spandex. They have these brand names, but they're actually plastic that's woven into a thread and then turned into clothing. And then when you wash that, it gives off microparticles of plastic because you don't put a filter on your washer, you just let it go into the system, and then that goes through the water treatment plant and then goes right into the river. So if they're small enough to go through any of the filters that are at the water treatment plant, it's just going to go into the river and then go into your drinking water. One of my students a few years ago in environmental science class did a study because she was really curious about that. And so we bought these little sieves that were like 200 microns and 50 microns and really tiny filters. And we washed like a pair of her spandex running shorts in there. And you would not believe the particles that are given off by just something that you think is pretty, intact. Like a pair of spandex, anything feels like that fiber isn't going anywhere, but it actually gives off a lot of fiber. The worst culprits were polyester fleece and acrylic hats. Like those just gave off lots and lots of particles. So when you wonder, like, how can this big amount of plastic get into our bloodstream? It's really through these microparticles that are shed through your clothing. And nobody knows, and we're not here to guilt trip anybody. Like hopefully you're getting the message that we're all in this together. We're trying to just, do the best we can, and we want to offer help, and, it's not your fault. It's not anyone's fault, so don't feel, like no one's shaming anybody, or like, don't feel guilty. It's like, we just have to do the best we can.
I'm going to say something about greenwashing. I know that's not the topic, but a lot of people are making an effort to get biodegradable, compostable knives and forks and bags and things like that. And the business I know just ordered thousands of bags from Green Bag. And I've been trying to find out, is Green Bag, is this really compostable plastic? Because they're just, this is called greenwashing, and it's making you feel like you're doing better. And it isn't fair, but we have to alert ourselves. So one of the things, these big organizations like Beyond Plastic and Breakthrough from Plastic, I mean, they are really doing the research. Our little group can't do that. But they are coming up with ideas about what is genuinely biodegradable, compostable. And somebody said to me, I mean, it's just, you go further and further into it. I thought, well, if a bag is made of cornstarch or corn gluten or something like that, then that's okay because that's not petroleum based. But the corn is probably grown with glyphosate. With glyphosate,
Roundup.
I mean Roundup.
No, you're right.
No, glyphosate.
Yeah.
Roundup.
I was asking what about
Roundup. Yeah. I mean, so that's the herb. That's the herbicide. The corn is grown in. So then they're making maybe compostable bags out of corn, but where did the corn come from? And you can go deeper and deeper, and you just go, how are we going to solve this problem? Now we have to have organic corn compostable bags.
Also, I think for every problem that we've posed, but not every problem, but there are solutions, and that's why we're here tonight. We're looking for solutions. There are organizations like Beyond Plastics that are actively looking for solutions and finding them. And like, for instance, okay, don't buy polyester, but you can buy cotton and wool. And that's available. You can also buy, in recycled stores or in reuse stores, lots and lots of clothes that are cotton, wool, hey, cheaper, funky, fun. It's not all gloom and doom. So there are solutions, and that's why we're here.
Good point.
How about encouraging farmers to grow more flax so we can have more linen?
why not?
I grew up on a corn and soybeans farm, and my wife and I have lots of battles about this because we're thoughtful human beings. But the reality is, my dad grew corn and soybeans because he had a note that he owed to the bank. And corn and soybeans is what allowed him to pay the bank. So he wasn't motivated to dump Roundup on the ground. He was just trying to feed us kids. And you know, if we had a different motivations in our food production system and he could make as much money selling lettuce and tomatoes, I'm sure he would have gladly done it. But we subsidize all the stuff in the middle of the grocery store, most of which isn't food. And so that's where we're at.
I think part of the issue here is that sometimes there isn't an easy answer, you know, and that's where we have to brainstorm to come up with solutions. But, you know, a farmer that, yeah, they're just trying to make a living, they're doing what they were told was a really good idea years ago, but now we're learning it's not such a good idea. But that's why collectively, as a community, you know, everybody has brilliant ideas, I'm sure, and as we put them together and share them, we can start turning things around.
Does anyone else have other ideas about how to involve your staff or your customers?
I don't know, you're at the chorus, so you know about the water and the refill.
I would really like to see businesses, and this may not be possible for all businesses, but I would love to see a mug tree. And people can bring their own mugs into a business, and that, of course, will mean that they're returning customers. It makes it personalized, and you know your mug is there, because I don't know how many times, even with the best intentions, I forget to bring my mug, or I forget to bring my stainless steel water container or something. And in fact, in every car, I've got my reusable whatevers. Now I just have to take it out of the car and bring it with me.
Yeah.
So I would love to see a mug tree. One time I was doing something and I had someone build a mug tree for me out of wood with little posts and whatnot. And we used that for the event, and it was just great fun. So anyway, that's just one idea that maybe we can start to think about.
Well, I think the fun part of this is going to be involving the customers. You know, I can think of all kinds of fun ideas. You know, everybody does selfies these days. You know, maybe they can take a shot of themselves at your business, you know, bringing their own to-go container, or, you know, doing something showing that they are not using plastic and just making it fun. You know, they suggest that the signs that you use be kind of comical. There's one picture in the material here where they have 2 jellyfish and then a plastic bag. You know, the one jellyfish says, "Hey, Bob, do you know that you're flirting with the plastic bag?" Because, you know, it just kind of gets your attention, and it's kind of funny. And so there's just a lot of ideas. I think the idea of having a Viroqua cup or a dripless cup, or, you know, to-go containers where they could be bought in large quantities, maybe not necessarily personalized with each business's logo, but a community logo that you could take to any business, you know, in any restaurant and use it. And I think that would not only build the sense of community, but it would be something where a business could perhaps just buy a few. You know, we could get them somehow collectively and then to get a better price. In fact, we've been in touch with a family-owned business in Waukesha, and I just mentioned that idea to them, and they said they would give us the setup cost at no charge because they believe in what we're doing. So there's a lot of ideas out there that we can do. And maybe we could get some kind of ditch the disposables club or a reuse club, you know, where you have people coming in and, you know, maybe the little card where they do something 10 times and they get a little incentive. You know, it's just thinking creatively like that to make it fun for your customers and kind of make it fun for your staff too, you know, when they're introducing the idea to customers. So, you know, we're hoping that all of you, you know, will come up with ideas, because you're already leaders in sustainability. I mean, you're already very aware of this. The fact that everybody is here is an indication to us that you want to make a difference. And so we just have to do it in a way that really involves the public, encourages them to do it in a meaningful but yet an enjoyable, fun-hearted way.
You know, actually, yesterday I was bopping around from shop to shop, and I always carry a bag, a reusable bag in my pocketbook. And that has been one of the handiest things. And so when people say, well, they start to wrap something in paper, I say, thank you, no. And I find that the business owners say, thank you. They're so pleased that I said no to extra paper and extra this to wrap the stuff in. So I love the idea that, you know, we're a community, we're all working together on this.
And every piece of paper, every piece of plastic that a business doesn't have to use is money saved. You know, if we can make reuse the norm in our area, you know, pretty soon everybody will be doing this. I mean, I can see Viroqua taking this concept by storm. I can see a Wisconsin Foodie episode about how cool Viroqua is, you know, for doing this. And I think there's a lot of potential with all of us just banding together and from a, you know, local level, just deciding to do something about this. I think we had invited Anna Schumacher, who is the health inspector, and I'm sad to see she's not here, but we are definitely going to be following up with her so we can meet with her to find out the do's and the don'ts. Because, you know, as was mentioned, you know, a lot of times we hear, well, the health inspector says, and so we want to hear it from the health inspector's own lips, you know, to find out what the regulation is and then how we can get around it. Because there's information and material here that during COVID, you know, where everything was plasticky, that they got around it by having a business put the food on their own plate, on the counter, and then the customer picked it up and put it in their own container. You know, and then that plate can just be washed and reused, but there's no carry-out portion of it. So it's just ideas like that. Did you have anything you wanted to add about customers?
I was just thinking of when I was in college in Madison, my favorite coffee shop, Ancora Coffee Shop, had a bulletin board, and you could show a picture of yourself with your Ancora coffee mug wherever you were in the world, you know. So it was just a fun way that businesses could have their customers go with something reusable. And I can't, you know, they had metal cups, they had plastic cups. I actually took a picture of myself in front of, my family's from New Jersey, and the local mental institution is Ancora. So I took a picture of myself with my Ancora mug in front of this mental institution. It was kind of funny. But yeah, like you can just, you know, if you're promoting, if you're getting people involved, and people want to see their picture, like, with other people of, you know, hey, we're all doing this thing. You know, this is a good thing that we're all doing. So, yeah, it could be fun, especially if more businesses join it. You know, it doesn't have to be a coffee shop. It could be any business.
Right. And one of the case studies that we're going to be talking about a little bit later that's included in this material, once they started doing something, you know, just like once you start doing something, everybody else joined in. You know, it's kind of starting the trend. It's trying to get things going. And Viroqua is so aware already, you know, so this is going to be, I think, an easy sell once we get to the point of actually making the switch. You know, as Chris mentioned, you know, there aren't a lot of easy options necessarily, but there are growing numbers of options out there. And when we talk about making the switch, after you've done the plastic audit, you've educated your staff, you've involved your customers, and now it's deciding what you want to do. And certainly, reusables are the gold standard as far as reducing litter, fighting plastic pollution, and combating climate change. And the upfront cost, of course, is higher, but many places have found that the payback comes in a very short amount of time. And the important thing to know is that financial help is available. Plastic-Free Restaurants is a nonprofit that raises funds to help businesses and schools with the cost of replacing disposable with reusable. And there are links in the information that can help certainly we would be interested in helping you with product research. Plastic-free restaurants, they have sheets, resources for schools, resources for restaurants, and you just have to apply for a subsidy from them. And they raise funds nationally exactly for this purpose, to help restaurants and schools make the switch. So it's not that you have to do it on your own. Yes, Mary?
Yes, you know, Tina and I talked quite a bit about the grant. What about grants instead of just subsidies, especially for school districts? And
Well,
I-
actually-
and also, I'm advocating for Tina specifically, and I don't know about the other schools, like Viroqua School District isn't here. But we have, you know, I was counting in my head, you must be feeding close to 300 people?
350 breakfast sandwiches.
You know, I mean, that's a great number. It's one thing to think about a smaller school district or a private school, not private necessarily, because I went to a fairly sizable private high school, so, but, you know, I mean,
With
we need to be able to address the masses.
Right, with plastic-free restaurants, when you apply for a subsidy, what they do is if you are replacing a disposable with a non-plastic reusable, they will subsidize the difference in cost. And if you're replacing it with a reusable plastic item, I think they will subsidize half of it. But they're very generous with schools as far as helping schools
Right.
make that transition.
Well, that's good to hear, because,
Right.
and for one thing, you know,
I'd like to see what
a
is.
second grader
available
isn't
for
gonna
us.
be real.
Well, what they ask you to do, you know, apply for a subsidy from us, and then they have all kinds of downloads, reusable food serviceware guides, reusable foodware database. I mean, there's all kinds of information.
Is that in this package, that sheet?
The written links are in there. If you go online to Beyond Plastics to find what Vicki is showing you now, you can just click on the link and it'll take you to where you can find it, where you can either print off or get more information. But basically what they're asking you to do is figure out what you want to do, what change you want to make, and then you apply to them for some financial subsidy. So that's kind of an exciting part of it, because the idea of a business making changes without that, you know, can be a little bit more daunting, because of course the bottom line is extremely important. So this organization is designed to make this more possible.
One of the things you can do is go through your trash cans and see what's getting thrown away, and see, wow, is there some one particular thing that we could really just get rid of, we could have reusable. And I was wondering, at your school, do you have bottled water available for the children? I wonder if
Yeah, we
that's
have a fountain with a filler,
Mhm.
so that if the child brings their own water container from home, they can fill it for nothing. But most of them choose to buy a bottle of flavored water.
They want the flavored water.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So that's a discussion you could have, because if you just stopped having bottled water and everybody did have to bring their own container, that would just eliminate so much plastic. Maybe there's some way to have, you know, little,
But doesn't a food court have, what are they, 5-gallon containers? Because I know my daughter-in-law goes there and refills. Yeah, refills. Huh, listen.
A lot of times the schools are getting funding from the
Pepsi.
bottled water company,
Yeah.
Pepsi, buy their scoreboards, put my pop machine in your school.
We
I know
did.
you need a scoreboard.
Mhm.
We did, and then we had to exclusively have just Pepsi products from them.
What if we
We're done with
stop
that
doing
now.
that and
We're
just
done
let
with that.
I'm
Huh?
glad you're done.
Yeah.
I mean, my
It's
taxpayer
15
dollars.
years, I think, for 15 years, they had been.
Would you pay more for a scoreboard? If the school district said we need $12,000 for a scoreboard,
No,
Would you say, yeah, I'm good for 4?
No, I.
That's right, you wouldn't, so that's why they go to Pepsi.
My property taxes have seen my 3 children go through that school district, and now my granddaughter's there. So,
I just, comment, when my husband and I vacationed in Hawaii, and one of the resorts we stayed at, they gave us it was a plastic bottle that had their logo on it of the resort, and then they had filling stations all over the resort. And you got one free, when you checked in, and then you could refill it as often as you wanted at their filling station. And that would be, we've got the filling station. The kids are encouraged to bring their own water, especially this time of year when it's warm. But we still have the ones that, we go through 10, 15 cases of flavored bottled water a week.
Well, the problem is the flavored bottled water probably is not good for them. I mean, it's not good to be drinking anything out of plastic, number one, especially those flimsy water bottles, because the transfer, of the chemicals in the plastic is just very easy, especially if they get a little bit warm or hot. Also, it could be a matter, the whole idea of pop in schools is just like, no. Whose idea was that? It's not pop, okay, but just the water bottles, okay. But granted, it is re-educating the administration, and parents and kids, but it's worth it. So that's another thing that could certainly be done. One of the issues that comes up is the cost of additional dishwashing, and the studies that have been done, again, it's in the material, is that the additional dishwashing and associated costs turn out to not be high. And then they talk a little bit like on the East Coast and the West Coast, they have dishwashing services that will come in, pick up your dirty dishes, wash them, and bring them back. And of course, that would be a lovely business opportunity for somebody in Viroqua, but we don't have it right now. The next thing to talk about is the bring your own, which to me makes the most sense.